thanks for the very kind invite. I'm very happy to be here to talk a bit about algorithmic pricing, or that was the task that Isabel and Michael gave me to talk a little bit about. And I broadened the scope a little bit, yeah, but most of the time we will talk about pricing and the challenges for competition policy. And given that I was expecting a rather diverse audience, I kept it to a talk that I think is understandable for non-economists as well. At least that's my impression. You also see that it's not produced by ChatGPT, because I immediately have a sort of natural unintelligence mistake and put the wrong Muelheim on the slide. But now I found the right Muelheim. So I'm here actually. Thanks very much for having me. First of all, sort of when I sort of gave it a little bit more thought, what do I want to talk about? I thought let me sort of, if we think about what's the sort of challenge of algorithms for the economy and for competition policy, I thought I can structure it more or less broadly into 4 areas. One is sort of very small, sort of obviously algorithms help us to increase productivity in many areas. So this is something where we can all be very happy, and competition policy can be reasonably relaxed, maybe not completely, but reasonably relaxed. Then we have an area that is even sort of discussed a bit more intensely. Personalized advertising hasn't to do with pricing yet, where sort of we may be somewhat more concerned, but I will argue we can be also, it's maybe not the main problem in competition policy. The main areas, of course, competition policy sort of first of all always deals with pricing. And then there are second order effects. We also sort of care about innovation, product placement, and so on. But I thought I gave most of the room of my talk to pricing. And there are 2 areas. One is sort of changes in pricing, price differentiation of various sort of sorts. And secondly, this is currently, I would say, the main concern. Machine-based pricing, where humans don't set prices anymore, and the question, can this lead to types of cartelization, actually, that we haven't seen in the past, because in the past, as the president actually said, cooperation is between people, and now we may see a new phenomenon that cooperation, and in the area of cartels, of course, we don't like cooperation, is not necessarily among people anymore, and how can we deal with that area. And then I talk a little bit about the control of information. So this is by and large the structure of what I thought I will try to convince you that it is not too boring, actually. So first of all, this is only one slide. I said, well, of course, we know algorithms lead to product improvements in many, many areas. Think about farming, smart farming. Think about logistics. Think about matching on platforms, even Spotify. Yeah, most people would say, okay, this is productivity enhancing. Yeah, this is resource saving in many areas. So this is typically what we want to see. Yeah, getting sort of more sort of out of our resources that we invest. So this is something that is typically, of the first order effect would be something where we say this is sort of contributing to growth, to well-being, something that we like. Of course, secondarily, a question has arisen whether there may be competition concerns, in the sense that in order to develop smart and good and well-working algorithms, you need data. And the more data you have, the better the algorithms become. And obviously, the largest pools of data are typically available to very successful firms. Let's say one argument is often Google's search algorithm is the best algorithm because most people use Google. So there's a sort of learning by having access to the data. And a question in competition policy has emerged. Is data the new natural resource, that in the new, what we call in competition law, essential facility that other competitors may need access to in order to compete? Like the railroad bridges that we had in 1912, the famous essential facility case where you say, okay, if I can't use the railroad tracks of another railroad, we won't be able to compete. If I can't use the electricity lines of another company or the local loop in telecommunications, is data the new essential facility? And by and large, I think, at least in Europe, but to a growing extent also in the US, the conclusion has been yes. Yeah, it may be something like an essential facility. It may be something that we need access to, that competitors need access to. So we've seen quite, I would say, substantial competition law reforms in Europe, in Germany actually in particular, already in 2 years ago, where access to data of competing firms has become easier, and we will see the Digital Market Act will come into force in May of this year, so only 2 more months, actually will give access to search engine data, for example, to competitors on a real-time basis, with the hope that other firms may be able to develop similar search engines of similar quality as Google search engine at the moment. We will see whether this hope will materialize, but we see that the policy sort of has been really changed, that data access has become easier and hopefully solves this competition issue that we have. A problem that has, or an issue that has been discussed in policy circles, especially among consumer organizations, has been personalized advertising. And of course, here it's a bit more difficult. Yeah, sometimes there is an uneasy feeling about personalized advertising, but sort of from an economic perspective, it's not quite clear whether that's really welfare deteriorating. Yeah, in the past we had what I would call spam. Yeah, we had rather broad advertising. So you remember, maybe you received, or still, I'm still surprised how much advertising I still receive. That I think, okay, that has nothing to do with me. Yeah, so why do they send me this? This is very unsmart. Advertising, yeah. So, but obviously, if you're sort of receiving advertising that you're not interested in, yeah, that's doing nothing. It bothers you typically, yeah. So that is an annoyance. So, in some sense, the smarter advertising becomes, yeah, the more you actually are being sent advertising that you're actually interested in. Yeah, for example, I drink wine, so I prefer to see wine advertising than furniture advertising or something. You would say, okay, that's should be typically welfare enhancing. Yeah. Of course, economics would be boring if there wouldn't be, on the other hand, argument. And we see there's some literature that has also been actually pushed quite a lot by my colleague Paul Heitus in Düsseldorf. It says, yes, but consumers differ, and there may be what we call naive consumers, or we call them in economics maybe boundedly rational consumers. And if algorithms help you to identify these naive consumers who may be persuaded to or tricked into buying stuff that you don't like to buy, actually that they regret of having bought later, that may not be welfare enhancing. Actually, we see there's a lot of literature in the meantime about credit cards, for example, that people are, especially that's more problem in the US maybe than in Europe, that they are sort of led into subscribing to credit cards that they regret in having, and there may be needs for special regulation, at least if these are sort of high stakes decision, like in financial markets, for example. So if it's a professionalization of doorstep selling in a way, then this may not be welfare enhancing, but by and large, I would say, yeah, more targeted advertising is typically better than spam. Yeah, from a welfare perspective. And now I come to the area of pricing. Here we have two areas. Price differentiation on the one hand, so different prices for the same product. And I think by and large the feeling, yeah, not necessarily the material evidence, but the feeling is that price differentiation has increased. And here we really need to distinguish between 2 types of price differentiation. Sometimes we have what we call personalized pricing. What's meant by personalized pricing? That means the price or the offer that you receive depends on your personal characteristic. I would say this is in some sense nothing new. Yeah, you remember if you wanted to buy a car, it always sort of depends on how good a negotiator you are. Yeah, so you can say it always depended on your personal characteristics. Yeah, sort of if you drive to the car dealer with a new BMW, you probably receive a different price than if you come with an old Toyota to the car to the garage. Yeah, but of course, with sort of the big data, with algorithms, this has improved in a sense. Yeah, that's sort of, we can say in theory you can much better distinguish between consumers. Yeah, and there are anecdotes at least that the price that you receive may depend on your device that you order. So if you have a mobile device that's old, you may receive a different price than if you have a flash new mobile device. At least there are these stories around. The other area that is not the same is what we call dynamic pricing. At least if you live in Germany, you have long been exposed to that. If you drive a car, at least, yeah, gas stations are masters of dynamic pricing. At least in Germany, they change the prices by something like 20 times a day. Yeah, it's sort of in other countries it's still different. Yeah, but what dynamic pricing means, you change the same price for everybody, but different prices at different times. So in Germany, for example, if you go to the gas station in the morning, you receive a higher price than if you go to the gas station in the evening. But everybody gets the same price. Yeah, so it's not personalized pricing in the sense, because prices are the same for everybody. Yeah, only they differ during the day. Personalized pricing means that there may be combinations of personalized pricing and dynamic pricing, but means we come to a shop at the same time and still receive a different price. Yeah, and what the literature has found so far, and what is maybe, and as I said, surprising, is that for personalized pricing, there is astonishingly little systematic evidence that we can observe personalized pricing. Yeah, we have a few, everybody knows these stories. Yeah, a friend of my sister has experienced the following, and received a different price. And often in these stories, you are not quite sure, was it really dynamic pricing? Did he maybe book the flight at a later point at somebody else? Yeah? Or was it really personalized pricing? And the experiments that we have seen so far find that in some areas we've seen personalized pricing, especially in the travel segment. Yeah? But in many, many other areas we've seen surprisingly little evidence for personalized pricing. What we have seen is a growing sort of more widespread dynamic pricing, actually on the internet. So prices that change during the day or between days, but much less evidence actually for this personalized pricing. And of course, we have asked ourselves, why is it? Yeah, and I think the first colleagues who really sort of digged into it very deep were not very far away, actually, from the University of Applied Science of the Lower Rhine, Niederrhein. Michael Schleusner and a colleague, who did a very interesting systematic study, sort of put up various mobile outlets, devices at various places in Germany, tried to book sort of or buy various stuff on the internet, and they sort of only find really in travel it matters. Yeah, with many other, let's say, electronic equipment, perfumes, whatever you buy on the internet, they found astonishingly little. And they sort of speculated, why do we see so little? And you can say, first of all, maybe this study, that's a study from 2015, so 8 years ago. You can say maybe at that point in time, I would subscribe, this maybe have been an argument, firms were just not professional enough. And if you talk to people in firms, actually they still say, yes, we would like to engage more intelligent pricing, but we don't find the people. Yeah, there's a scarcity of people who can actually do it. So they say, okay, maybe this may be a reason, but of course it's 8 years ago. But my colleague Peter Kenning, also from the University of Düsseldorf, did a second study a few years later, and they didn't find a lot of systematic evidence either for this personalized pricing. So maybe we still don't have people to do it. The second argument has been, well, of course, consumers are not totally dumb. They're also smart. So they may use sort of, if they find that prices differ between different offerings, especially on the internet, you can, of course, engage in applying super search engines like Check24, for example, who search engines, or you can think about sort of changing your IP address if you're smart enough, or use a software that does it for you. Yeah, like what we see with people don't like ads, so they actually employ ad blockers. We can of course think about software that could be easily deployed sort of to hide your cookies and so on, to make personalized pricing more difficult. But these are not so widespread. Of course, they are not widespread. If personalized pricing is not an issue, it's not a surprise that the software to prevent personalized pricing is not available yet. Yeah, it's of course a bit like the chicken and the egg. And of course, the other argument that they put forward is that competition on the internet is more intense, possibly. So of course I would like to charge, I know Michael is a professor of economics, so I know he has a decent salary. I would like to charge him more than somebody who's cooking in the kitchen, for example. But of course there are many people on the internet who would like to charge him more, and there's always an incentive to undercut you a little bit. Yeah, so it's not so easy to put a surcharge on your price, yeah, because on the internet it's just not so easy. Not so difficult to find somebody else who offers the same product. So competition may be more difficult. And I did a study myself with Werner Reinhardt from the University of Cologne, where we found that also firms, we talked a lot actually to traders, yeah, and retailers, and says we are actually a bit sort of reluctant to engage in personalized pricing because we have a sense that consumers may find it unfair. Actually, and if they find it unfair, we may make a profit, yeah, for in the short term, but we may lose a customer in the long term. Once they found out, so we have sort of put a surcharge on their price. So there was quite a reluctance, not because of competition actually, but because they said we rather want to invest in the long-term relationship with the customer. And if they find out we sort of charge them more than somebody else at the same time, we rather risk our reputation, and sort of that sort of made them reluctant to engage. So this is maybe what keeps, at the moment, leads to the finding that price differentiation is not as widespread as we see it. What we see on the other hand, and what may be a bit surprising, is that in offline markets, yeah, we see an increase in personalized pricing in an indirect way. These are, for those of you who are not from Germany, these the two sort of most widespread customer cards, loyalty cards in Germany. The first is the payback card, the second is the Deutschland card, which are employed by Germany's biggest grocery retailers, Rewe and Edeka. And on the bottom there are Swiss cards, which are even more widespread in Switzerland by the two largest Swiss retailers. And I found it astonishing. In Switzerland, more than 80% of people use these cards. Actually, in Germany, the number is lower. Yeah, but what does it mean? Of course, you get the loyalty card. You show it when you buy something. Yeah, and what firms have started to engage in is giving you individual discounts, actually based on your shopping history. So that means in the supermarket we see price tags. Yeah, but let's look a bit into the future. In the sense, this is the maximum price that you pay, because there may be people running around with individualized coupons. Yeah, some have these coupon machines at the entrance of the supermarket. Some just give you a discount through sending you apps on your mobile phone or something, and say, okay, you get discounts, yeah, based on your shopping history. So that means we move into a way where, of course, not all of the 10,000 supermarkets prices are individualized, but some of the sort of products have individual prices, in the sense that, yeah, so people who don't have the cards pay the maximum price. Yeah, that's the price tag that you see. And there may be others running around through the supermarket that get a discount on the same product. And this is a development that has, for competition economists, is some concern, at least. Maybe not the most severe concern, but what does it do? Yeah, in, let's say, the old world, yeah, where supermarkets found it difficult to price discriminate. Yeah, they had the same price for everybody. So if you were going to the supermarket, you were pretty sure you get the same price. And there are these old models, say, lazy people like myself, yeah, are in some sense free riding on the bargain hunters. Why is that? The supermarkets always had in setting its prices, always had the trade-off, should I say, a low price to attract more bargain hunters, Schnäppchenjäger in Germany, yeah? Or should I set a higher price to milk the customers who would come anyway? Yeah, and you have typically some sort of mixed strategy where you say, okay, let's lower the price sometimes, yeah, as with Aldi, you know, he is very famous in Muelheim, Aldi, yeah, bitte bevorraten Sie sich, yeah, please buy a lot now, we won't have the product for a long time, and then you would sort of, all the bargain hunters would come to the supermarket, yeah, and implicitly, yeah, the people who are lazy were protected by the bargain hunters. Yeah, because I know sort of, I also get the low price, even if I don't compare the prices, yeah, because they cannot sort of forgo all the bargain hunters. Yeah, so they actually, the bargain hunters, the Schnäppchenjäger, protected me, yeah, from, even though I was not comparing the prices. Yeah, and now, of course, if I can more and more disentangle the groups, yeah, and say, okay, the people who are lazy, like myself, yeah, pay the high price, and the bargain hunters, we give them individualized coupons, sort of, or based on the loyalty card. They get the discounts. Of course, we don't have the law of one price anymore. In one, so we have different prices. Yeah, we can speculate about market definition for those of you who like competition law or not. Yeah, but we can also say the public good aspect in a way. So the externality of competition does not work anymore. Yeah, so far I was protected. Yeah, and competition was working, supermarkets were competing, and they were competing for both bargain hunters and lazy people like myself. And if we move into a world of individual prices, it becomes more difficult. You give me a sign when the minister is appearing. So what's the conclusion of price differentiation? I would say, well, maybe that's not the main concern that we should have about prices. First of all, it's not as widespread yet as we think. Secondly, even if I'm not protected by the bargain hunters anymore, we have to keep in mind that the bargain hunters probably profit from the price differentiation, and if they get the lower prices, because, and these are typically people, if you think about who has lower opportunity cost of time, who has more time to compare prices, you would say typically it's people, who, like students, who are sort of not necessarily the highest earning people, you would say from a sort of social justice perspective may even be good. They say lazy people like myself who earn a lot pay higher prices and other people pay lower prices. So it may not even be welfare deteriorated. Of course, there may be actually areas where we even want to have personalized pricing. There are nice examples from the car insurance industry, where people say, okay, if you install this black box that monitors your driving, you get a lower price. We'd say, well, it's probably a smart idea, because a lot of people install this type of device. Of course, they get a lower price, but they monitor their driving, and we tend to want people to drive carefully. And not to speed around. So this may be good. In health insurance, it's of course more an issue. Do we want to have price differentiation in health? In Europe or Germany especially, we really don't like this type of price differentiation. But of course, this is why the prices are regulated, and there's very, very limited scope for price differentiation in health insurance, at least in the government regulated health insurance. And also the scope of offerings is regulated. The services that have to be redeemed by the health insurance. So maybe this is not the main area. What drives competition, economists and lawyers likewise more around, is cartelization, actually. So there was already, like as early as 2016, article in the Harvard Business Review said how pricing bots could form cartels and make things more expensive. And the idea is very simple. If you delegate your pricing decision to a bot or to an algorithm, the algorithm may be smart enough to find out that cartel prices earn you a higher profit than non-cartel prices. So this is of course the question: how smart are the algorithms? Do they really find out? And there haven't been any cases so far, and the really empirical evidence, like from field data, is very limited so far. And the only cases that we have seen that really have come to the courts are two famous cases: USA versus Topkins, and the e-Turas decision is a European decision where cartels were, let's say, monitored with the help of algorithms, but were not formed by algorithms. So actually this was still with human involvement. Humans agreed on prices and then used software to monitor the prices. So this is not artificial intelligence in the sense. But now we have quite a bit of literature that has emerged, especially in the last 3 years, where we see that actually bots or algorithms may be smart enough to form cartels. Of course, there are still software issues to solve. You have to really make sure that you compare the right products with each other and so on. But of course, if you go through the literature, there's this article by Calvano, etc., American Economic Review, or the EPEAI paper by Hansen et al., or forthcoming, that's actually 2023, Brown and McKay, American Economic Journal Micro, the empirical evidence in the sense of laboratory experiments and also theoretical sort of models suggest that this is a real concern, should be a real concern, that in markets where products are comparable, actually, algorithms may be helpful in leading to prices that are like cartel prices, even though they don't agree. In competition law, you always need an agreement of some sort to make it an illegal cartel. As long as you set your prices independently of somebody else, and I just set my prices. For example, if you are a little gas station, say, okay, I always undercut Shell by 2 cents. That's perfectly legal. You could even say I always set the same price as a Shell gas station. That's perfectly legal as long as you don't agree on it. Here, of course, we have a new challenge also for law because the bots don't agree on anything. It's not an agreement, but they can lead to the very same price as if they had agreed, even though they have not agreed on anything. And of course, this is a concern. Of course, there's this first empirical paper, in the sense true empirical paper by Assad et al., they are not yet published, on German gas stations, where they found could follow the rollout pattern of new pricing software throughout Germany. So a very nice geographical exercise. They found that one gas station after another installs this type of software, and they thought in the areas where the software was installed, the prices or the margins, so to say, increased vis-a-vis the areas where they hadn't installed the software yet. So that means it's not only a theoretical concern, it seems to be a concern that is also of empirical relevance. Of course, there are some other papers, as always, as in every science, there's some papers say, well, of course, there may be also other effects. There's this paper by Jeanette Miklos-Dahl and Tucker in Management Science say, well, if it allows you to predict demand better, the software, then you may also destroy cartels because you may have a stronger incentive to undercut your rivals in times of falling demand. There's a similar paper by my colleague Simon Martin and Alexander Rasch. So there may be also countervailing effects to some degree. And Hans-Theo Norman, Marco Sternberg just published, European Economic Review, said, okay, and if humans interact with machines, it also leads to higher prices, but what they found, the humans make the higher profit than the machine in the end. So this is means, basically what does it mean? Everybody would want to move to a machine world, but you don't want to be the first. So there's a first mover disadvantage, actually. If you are the first to install, because you can still trick the machines, so to say. And so this is interesting. As long as nobody wants to be the first mover, that may be good for us as consumers, so to say. So this is a severe problem, and I would say. And the question is, what can we do with policy? We don't have the agreement. We don't have the evidence that we otherwise have in cartels. You can. It may not even be the intention of the firm to engage in a cartel. It may be the outcome of various softwares. So the challenge for competition law and policy and economics is to find new compliance rules, actually, that try to prevent this type of cartelization if we don't want to end up with higher prices in these markets. And there is, I would say, no good solution at the moment. There's no easy solution that we have in other forms of cartels where we have made quite a bit of progress. And I think it's a real challenge for research in on this overlap of law and economics, where we have to think, what can we do in order to prevent moving into this world of higher prices? Let me make a few remarks at the end, before Ms. Neubauer is here, on an area that is, I think, it's even more difficult to handle in some way. Algorithms may also lead to distorted information. We have all this area sort of discussion with respect to politics, but even with respect to, let's say, product markets, that is a concern. Why is this a concern? Providers who supply information may have incentives to present the information not in a way that is best for consumers, but best for themselves. There may be a clear problem of what we call self-preferencing. You may sort of always list your product, so there's a big discussion, competition in our case, about the Amazon buy box. Is the Amazon buy box really presenting the product that's best for me or that's best for Amazon? There's this old joke, especially if they have these automates where you say, Alexa, I want to buy some Vata batteries, or let's say some other Duracell batteries. And Amazon, and then she says, well, we have the Amazon batteries. And say, now I want to have the Duracell batteries. I can't understand you. We have the Amazon batteries. So of course you wonder, is this some sort of self-preferencing? That is sort of very difficult to overcome. And here an issue that is of particular concern is that we have two types of market failure that may reinforce each other. Typically in economics, we have thought about market failures as separate issues. There's a market failure of market power, natural monopolies. There's a market failure of externalities. There's a market failure of information asymmetries. The old Lemons problem type argument. And here we may have a combination of market power and information asymmetries. And what is this? Think about Google as the leading search engine. If you want to compare the search results with something else, well, we still have Bing, but most people don't do it. And let's imagine we have some sort of real monopoly sort of supplier of some information. Of course, it's very difficult to compare this information with information from somewhere else. And the more difficult it is to compare. The easier it is to self-preference your own products, or those who pay you most to engage in self-preferencing. And so the information asymmetry may depend on market structure, actually, in the sense. If we have, the closer we get to monopoly, the more difficult it is to overcome information asymmetries. And these information asymmetries may be used to monopolize further markets, to leverage market power into other markets, actually. So we may not be it may not be so easy to disentangle the market failures as in the past. And we say, okay, we have information asymmetry, one market failure, and here we have market power, another. So it may actually reinforce each other. Information asymmetries may give rise to market power, and market power may make it easier to use these information asymmetries. And this is something where regulation has come into place. We have the Digital Markets Act that tries to prevent this, actually. The problem gets even more severe, if we think about filter bubbles, selective information perception, actually, especially in these, let's say, political and social sphere. This may be a particular problem. This cannot be actually, in my view, addressed by antitrust law. We probably need some sort of different perspective on media regulation or media laws in order to prevent this type of, let's say, manipulation or distorted information presentation beyond markets, actually. And this may be actually in the medium term, I think, one of the most severe problems of algorithms as we use them. I think, I leave it here to give the minister the word. And just let me very briefly conclude. So what's the summary? Of course, algorithms can improve products and increase the efficiency of production. Personalized advertising may not be the main problem. That may actually still be better than spam in many instances, with the exception of naive users who are boundedly rational. Personalized pricing is less common than often assumed, but dynamic pricing is increasing. For competition economists at the moment and lawyers, cartelization by algorithms is the most relevant issue where we have really concern that is not easy to tackle at the moment, and we really have to think about solutions probably in the area of compliance and corporate governance in order to prevent these types of cartelization. Furthermore, incentives to distort information exist, may trigger new need for intervention, especially if it's combined with market power or monopoly power in many markets. I leave it here. Hope this was enough food for thought, and thank you for your attention.